I moved to New York City when I was 22, wide-eyed, overstimulated, and quietly hoping that chaos might crack me open in some beautiful way. And somehow, this noisy, unpredictable place became the backdrop of everything, where I pieced myself back together, fell in love, and gently put down roots. In today's episode, I'm sculpting tiny pieces of New York while sharing my raw and unfiltered experience of this loud, relentless city and how it slowly taught me to hear myself. Hi, my name is Emma and I live in New York City. And if you watched a couple videos ago, I released my first ever limited edition drop of my shop. Before that, I was doing made to order. And for the limited drop, I did a New York City collection. The drop went well, and it went so well that my little figurines, they sold out within 24 hours. Now, granted, I only made 3 of each, so it wasn't like a ton, but they went pretty quick. And I asked y'all if you wanted more and if I should make variations of them. And thank you for your feedback. You said yes. And so today in this episode of Coffee and Clay, which by the way, it's a little series where we sip on some coffee and have a little coffee chat while I sculpt using polymer clay. And I invite you to craft alongside with me while we have this video. And so in this video, I'm going to be making more of my little New York City figurines. I will also, because of your feedback, I'll be offering these as keychains as well. And then someone was like, what about pizza? What about a big New York slice of pizza? And I said, it had crossed my mind. And now that you mentioned it, I think I have to do it. And it occurred to me that even though I start basically all my videos by saying, hi, my name's Emma and I run a small handmade polymer clay shop out of my little New York City apartment in Brooklyn, out of a small section of my living room, which is true, I do. I've never actually talked about like my experience in the city and what the city means to me and what it's really like living in the city and being an artist in the city, and also being someone who lives in the city who has never honestly had much money, how I live in the city on a budget. And I'm a cusper, so the millennial side of me wants to say I'm gonna spill all the tea of what it's really like to live in New York. But if I want to be a cool kid and I want to hang out with the Gen Zers, I'm gonna tell you all of my lore about what it's really like to live in the city. Because when I moved here right after college, I had no money. I was thankful I was living with family, so that definitely helped. But then, girl, I was hustling. I worked like 5-6 different part-time jobs at one point. I then eventually had a corporate job, but it was a startup, so honestly did not pay well. And so I know what it's like to live in the city without wearing rose-colored glasses as a normal person on a budget. We're gonna talk all about the good, the bad, the things I love, the things I hate, because I'm very grateful to live in the city. And I also kind of have a love-hate relationship with the city. Before we dive into sculpting, another small business owner who I've been following, we've been following each other for months at this point, she reached out to me and she has a lovely crochet company. She makes crocheted coasters, as you'll see in a second. And also she has these mirrors that have like crocheted flowers around the edges. Ugh, beautiful. Also, when she reached out, she had no idea I'm gonna be releasing cups. So this is just like a perfect little coincidence. I think I'm gonna go with this one. And by the way, she didn't ask me to like shout her on the video. I was just like, girl, I'm gonna shout you out because I love your work and I want people to know about your work. But let's get on to claying and talking about good old New York City. When I sat down to plan out what I wanted to say in this video, I simply grabbed my journal and started writing. One of the main aspects I love about the city is that life feels very raw and unfiltered here. So I figured, why not be raw and unfiltered and just read you my journal entry? Yeah, I guess that's what we're gonna do. So let's begin. Welcome to the inside of my brain. Welcome to my journal. I want to start off by saying that there are 1,000,002 ways to live in the city, all depending on career, lifestyle, and especially money. But this is based on my experience as a young artist on a budget, with most of my friends being in the same circumstance. So if you're looking for that tech bro or rich girl boss NYC experience, I cannot speak to that. But this is just me as a normal person living her life in the city. I would visit the city as a child since my older brother moved here when I was around 11, 12 years old. Then I was in and out of the city a fair amount my senior year of college to help take care of my baby nephew. But it wasn't until after graduating college when I was 22 that I officially made the move. I honestly never thought I would end up in New York City growing up. It wasn't that I didn't like it, it was just always a lot. A lot of people, a lot of noises, a lot of smells. While I have to say walking past a cafe or a laundromat is lovely, there are definitely other smells that I would rather never smell in my entire life, and we'll just leave it at that. I just found it very overstimulating for my brain. But once I moved here, it did quickly become my home. My roots were established. For the first couple of years, I was essentially a full-time aunt nanny for my little baby nephew, since my brother and his wife are in the theater and music industry, and they're performing in shows most of the time. I then took on various other part-time jobs and freelance jobs. I babysat for other toddlers. I was an online ESL teacher, English as a second language. I dog walked for some celebrities and also very rich NYU professors. And I was also a preschool substitute teacher at one point. Also, I did eventually get my yoga teacher certification in Manhattan, and I started briefly teaching some classes, but that was cut short because of the pandemic, unfortunately. New York is ironically a city where you can feel very lonely, yet never alone, ever. I know that's completely contradictory, but there's just a certain energy about the city that allows you to feel in community, even when you're all by yourself. Honestly, my favorite part of the city is how weird it is. The city, it's seen it all. I promise you, if you've ever felt out of place or like you stick out like a sore thumb elsewhere, I know I did, that feeling will fade quite quickly here. And because of that, I feel like I can be more authentically myself here. Plus, there's a certain overlap between private and public life here that I actually love. For example, I would never dare cry on the streets of a random suburb if I could help it. Most likely, if I was out and about, I would be crying in the privacy of my car at least. But in the city, you're just living so much in public, out and about, that honestly, no one even bats an eye if they see me crying. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all. There's just a certain amount of respect and privacy that you're given while in public because so much of life is lived in public, especially on public transit. Trust, the subway really has seen it all. There was a very difficult moment a few years into living here that really shook me. A personal connection to something awful that happened back in my hometown. And I'm not going to go into details because I don't want it to be triggering for other people. But while I was out, I got a call from my mom. She wanted to tell me before the unfortunate event hit the national news, which looking back, I am so grateful that my mom did that. But I did end up breaking down in tears on the subway platform at Union Square. I still remember how strangers gave me respect and space though. No one stared, asked questions, or gave me any unnecessary attention. They just let me feel what I needed to feel. That small, quiet grace stuck with me. It was the first time I realized how this chaotic city, full of strangers and noise, could also feel kind of like a sanctuary. It can make you feel held even when you're alone. Also, I know people often say New Yorkers are cold, but I honestly disagree. It's just such a packed place that we are simply giving each other space in public. But if you fall down, if you need directions, or you just get into a tricky situation and need help, there will always be people here to help you out. New Yorkers step up and help each other out when needed. That's for sure. But on a lighter topic, going along with how much I love the weirdness and quirkiness of the city, I adore how creative it is. There is inspiration and energy and momentum everywhere. The amount of galleries, shows, and art is inescapable. Because of that, there's also a certain youthfulness to the city, the feeling of constant growth and movement. I am 30, and none of my friends have kids. And honestly, most of my friends aren't even married or in relationships. And that's totally fine. Like, the typical social timeline just kind of entirely goes out the window here. And also, not to say there's anything wrong with that either. It's a different way of life. But here, like, none of us are in a rush. We want to let our youth last for as long as possible. Because, people don't come to the city to settle down. People come for experience and life. So I think I previously mentioned that I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the city though. Part of that is my love and hate for the public transit. When it runs well, it's great, but typically it is not running great. Sometimes the loudspeakers on the trains are so busted that trying to hear the conductor is like trying to understand what that teacher from Charlie Brown is saying. Most of the time, it isn't an issue. They're just letting you know what stop you're at and what the next stop is. But occasionally, they are trying to tell you that the train is either going express or it's just, entirely being rerouted to a different train line. And, you only figure that out once you realize you've either completely missed your stop or you're in the wrong neighborhood. So that kind of sucks. Most of the trains are old and there's construction on it all the time. The construction just kind of feels like Band-Aids though. I feel like it just keeps breaking and the construction is never ending. Honestly, having such an expansive subway system does provide a lot of freedom though. While sometimes the commute might be an hour long or more, depending on where you're going, you don't need a car here. You don't need that expensive asset like you do in the large majority of other places. But that being said, I actually do have a car. I didn't when I first moved to the city, but my wife and I moved out of the city for a little bit during the pandemic and got a used car during that time. She's an old 2010 little compact car, but she's still going strong. Toyotas, they're pretty awesome. On one hand, it can be annoying because we do have to worry about street parking and moving our car during street cleaning times. And don't even get me started on the amount of tickets we've accidentally accumulated over the years from forgetting to move our car. And it just, it's sitting there and they get us. And we forgot to move it. It's totally our fault. But my favorite part about having a car is that I can drive just 20 minutes, sometimes 30 depending on traffic. And I can be on a beautiful beach looking out over the Atlantic Ocean. I feel like most people forget that New York City is a coastal city. It is actually technically a cluster of islands. Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens. Yep, all islands. Like, I'm sitting here on my island right now, close to the ocean. Like, it's pretty awesome. We get all 4 seasons here. The summer will get hot, unbearably hot. The heat gets trapped. And then the winters, they get cold. The city can be a lot, especially at certain times of the year. January through March is always a very rough period in the city. The excitement and energy of the holidays fades, and now everyone is just tired, cold, trying to save money, and miserable. And honestly, the city feels kind of depressed during that time. And it's hard always being around that collective depressive energy for those months. But now that spring is starting to be here, the days are getting more consistently warm, the sunlight is lasting longer, and people are happier. Everything feels lighter. The city just feels like it comes back to life. And this energy, this lighter, happier, giddy kind of energy will last for most of the summer until we tend to hit mid-August into September. And then the city becomes unbearably hot because the heat just gets trapped in the city. Like, I feel like in most places, it'll get cool at night. It'll get chillier. That doesn't tend to happen here. It gets hot, the heat gets trapped, especially because there's so many window ACs happening. They're just like putting out so much heat onto the streets. Around that time, the city will probably become a bit crankier again. But then once the chillier fall weather starts to roll in, everyone starts to get happier again, and we all embrace the cozy vibes and have a sweet, amazing reprieve from the heat. We have everything sculpted now except for the food accessories, but I do need to pause. I need to go help my friend move, moving anywhere is like a headache, but moving in New York City, thankfully, Having friends by your side makes it a lot better, but it is a pain to move in the city. So it'll most likely be too dark by the time I get back to keep filming and sculpting. So when we pick back up, we will finish off these little Florences. We'll make some tiny little coffee cups, some bagels, and a pizza. And that'll be really fun. I love making mini food stuff. All right, I'll catch you on the flip side. Well, it is day 3 and we are on our 3rd coffee of this video. I honestly didn't think this would take 3 days to get through. I mean, I knew it'd take at least 2, but oh my God. My neighbor's moving and it's very loud in the hallway. Anyways, as I was saying, so I knew it would take 2 days to complete. And I guess the reason it's taking 3 days is because I helped my friend move yesterday, which was a long day, but it was a good day. It went well. Everything that we needed to get done got done. She's moved in. I honestly, street cleaner or truck. It's so loud. I was gonna say, oh my God. Sometimes the city drives me nuts. I was saying, I honestly can't be bothered to put on makeup these days because the allergies in New York are sure bad right now and my eyes are so itchy. And so, you know, we're going all natural lately. And I think that's also great. I think it's good to like put your natural face online sometimes and not just like wear makeup all the time. I have, for better or for worse, lived in many, many, many places and neighborhoods in the city. When I first moved here, I actually lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment with my brother and his family. I had just a bed in the living room, but it was honestly so sweet to be there and to be with family, especially after we lived geographically so far apart from each other for so many years. And then I lived in various sublets around the city in different boroughs before officially signing my first lease after about 1.5 years after first moving to the city. But that being said, my current apartment, where I've been for around 2.5-3 years, is the longest I've ever lived in one place in my entire adult life. Over those years, some of the sublets I stayed in were amazing, and honestly, I got like a steal for them. I didn't pay nearly what they were worth. But then there was one sublet in particular that was awful. It fried my nervous system. It started out fine, but then when I started dating my now wife, the girl I was subletting from, it was just 2-bedroom apartment. It was just me and her, but you know, she was the main person on the lease. She became super passive aggressive and it was just so uncomfortable, which is also just weird in New York. Like it's a weird thing to encounter. And I still to this day though, I don't know if she was either just very homophobic and uncomfortable that I started dating a girl and brought a girl around, or if she was just like in love with me and handled it really weirdly. I don't know, but let's just say I had to get out of there. Thankfully, she wasn't the most organized and I actually found my safety deposit check crumpled up, just randomly lying on the floor one day. So I snatched up my security deposit and I began making my exit plan. Falling in love in the city is magical. Being able to walk around and see all the spots where milestones happened is so nostalgic and special. When I first moved here, as I said before, I had my older brother and his family, but I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anyone else. And trying to make friends, as we all know, as an adult is hard in general, but then also in the city with everyone being so busy was even harder than I expected. So I decided to just dive into dating. I wanted to explore the city, and dating was a fun way to spend time with others, meet new people, and have new experiences. Also, after being a queer kid growing up in a small Ohio town, living in a city allowed me to really safely explore my sexuality, and moving to New York, I was really grateful to not have to worry about any hate or stares or weirdness when it came to dating someone, another woman. Sometimes I still honestly do get hesitant in other parts of the country, or I feel like the way I dress sometimes makes me stick out like a sore thumb if I'm not in a city. A little less now that my hair is longer, but for most of my 20s, I had a shaved head, like a buzz cut. Like we're talking, I had a fourth an inch of hair on my head. And I honestly still pretty frequently have the urge to shave my hair off again, but the growing out process can be pretty painful. I am getting on a tangent, but I don't want to cut my hair now. I want to grow it out. I want to have long French braids. And I also want to, when I have a little more money, play around with dyeing my hair and doing some different like pastel colors and just playing around with my hair. I love playing around with my hair. Okay, I'm getting off on a very big tangent. Welcome to my journal thoughts, my random squirrel little neurodivergent brain, but let's reroute back to New York City. Only 6 months into living in New York, a couple months after I turned 23, I met my now wife. We had our first date at a coffee shop near Union Square, and then we just kept dating almost day after day. After a few months, we were sitting in a little park in Manhattan, kind of close to Union Square, but it's a smaller one, not technically Union Square. We were sitting on a park bench, and I was watching the pigeons. I love pigeons, by the way. We have a couple black and white pigeons who sit in our fire escape all the time, and we have actually named them Cookies and Cream and Scarlet. But again, getting off topic, squirrel brain. So I am just sitting next to her on this park bench, enjoying the summer weather, and she's on a phone call with her mom. It's the most mundane moment. Nothing big is happening. We are simply just living life side by side. And I just knew in that moment that I could do that for the rest of my life. And then the rest was history. New York saw it all. I have so many memories in the city. And even though I live here, it's already become such a nostalgic place for me. I also love that New York is such a diverse place. I love hearing so many different languages throughout the city and being surrounded by people from all walks of life. Also, after feeling like a misfit growing up, I find that a lot of neurodivergent people, like myself, tend to move to the city or a city because never before have I found so many other weird, quirky, beautiful, creative friends. And it's honestly been really healing for my soul to be in a community like this. Okay, I'm definitely noticing the consistent theme of me just loving how weird the city is, but I love how unique this place is. Although I haven't always loved the city. Sometimes I've felt so claustrophobic and suffocated because of how packed it can be. I'm very sensitive to sounds and the energy of people around me, which honestly can be a gift in some situations, but literal hell in others. I do have days where I just dream of having a standalone house, a backyard to grow a large garden, and just let my dog run around all day in the grass. I've craved moving to a slower paced place sometimes, but I also don't know where that place would be. When I do leave the city, I'm reminded that I do like it here. It's a contradictory struggle of my mind. One side of me just wants to be left alone in the middle of the woods or on a random beach, no one else around. But then also, I do kind of need the excitement and stimulation around me too. I do know that since starting my company, I have been much more content and happy being in the city though. And I think I've always felt a weird dissonance in me because I was surrounded by people in the city chasing their dreams. But for many years, I honestly wasn't chasing mine. I was just trying to get by. And I realized I had a resentment built up because the root of it was like jealousy, you know? I couldn't handle sitting back and watching them. But I also didn't have it in me to chase my dreams at the time. I was too burnt out and stuck in a cycle. While life now feels like a constant roller coaster, so much is happening. You know, I would rather feel it all and feel alive than feel numb. And that's also why I love the city, because it makes me feel like that. Living in New York, it is not an easy life, but it does make me feel very alive. And at the end of the day, honestly, there is no perfect place. Every place has its pros, every place has its cons. But New York, whether I initially thought it would be or not, has become my home. Will I always live in the city? I don't know, but it's where I am for right now. Well, we have finished making all of our little New York Florences. Look at my little baby. You're such a cutie. These 6 over here, I'm gonna leave these unbaked actually, because I'm gonna give people the option when they buy it if they want it as a figurine or if they want it as a keychain. So I'm gonna securely put these away and make a little spot for them over here in my clay container so that they are covered, they are away from dust. And then over here, I have 4 over here, 2 of each kind, and one of them has like an eye pin in it so that way I can attach as a keychain, and the other 2 are just gonna be figurines so that way I can bake these. I can glaze these and then use these as the product photos and like promo stuff I'll put on my Instagram about them. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you liked this video, and let me know what you think of this format for my clay and coffee. I've gotten comments in the past of people asking me to slow down my process. They want to see more of the clay aspect. And so this time, as you noticed, I basically did the clay and then I added a nice little voiceover on top of it for most of it. So it's a little more podcast style-ish, I guess, with the clay visual element. So let me know what you thought about this version. I hope you liked it. I had a lot of fun making it. It was also honestly a bit more relaxing to just be able to focus on clay and not having to clay and talk at the same time, because honestly that multitasking is kind of hard to do both, to clay and talk at the same time. At least for me. I find it easier to just focus on one at a time. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you really like this video. If there's any items you'd like to see me sculpt in future videos or topics you'd like me to talk about, or if you have more questions about like New York City or my experiences or just, I don't know, any questions at all, feel free to leave me a comment below and I will get back to you on that. And yeah, I hope you have a really great rest of your day. Do something creative, do something good for yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, friends.